Welcome back to Tousi TV, your global news channel. We come back to you guys with a full live coverage coming from the Middle East. We now go to Egypt as the so-called Gaza Peace Summit is now happening. We've had some drama over the last few minutes, including an explosion in Egypt, which we're going to show you the video in a few seconds. But the Hamas leaders couldn't be found about an hour ago. This is following Hamas's admission that they can't find a number of the bodies of the hostages. So they're only releasing 4 of the dead bodies. They have released all the living ones. We do have our live feed from the peace summit in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. But let me show you what happened earlier. As President Trump landed in Egypt, there was an explosion that occurred. I'm going to show you the video first, and then we're going to explain exactly what's going on and what the authorities are doing about it. Let's go to the moment of the explosion. So essentially, there was a lot of people who started pointing fingers at the Muslim Brotherhood. The authorities in Egypt, this happened in the eastern parts, from the east to the east of Cairo. It said that they are now investigating this matter and they want to ensure that there is no security risk. On the ground, the local police have said that it might have just been an accident. It was a bit of a loud bang, but they are investigating this to ensure that the attendees are safe. Of course, it's slightly further out away from where the conference venue is in Sharm el-Sheikh, but Hamas have already said that they are only releasing 4 dead bodies, so 24 are missing right now. One is Guy Aluz, Yossi Sharabi, Belvin Shoni, and Daniel Perez. So these are the 4 that will be released shortly. As we said, all living hostages, surviving ones, have been released already. Israel Katz is not too happy in the Israeli government. He's now said the urgent mission to which we are all committed now is to ensure the return of all the abducted bodies home. Hamas's announcement about the expected return of 4 bodies today is a failure to meet commitments. Any delay or deliberate avoidance will be considered a gross violation of the agreement and will be responded to accordingly. Now, the families of those, the remaining 24 dead bodies are now saying that we should call off the peace deal. You cannot deal with these guys. Now, one main problem to deal with is, of course, the ceasefire itself, then the long-term peace plan. The reality is that it's highly likely that the Hamas members who were in charge of looking after the dead bodies, or know where they are being held, they might have already been killed by the IDF. So the other members of Hamas right now, they are saying we don't know where they are because you've already killed the ones that they were basically looking after the dead bodies, or they knew the location of the dead bodies, right? So that it could be that, or it could just be the Hamas are playing mind games. They know exactly where they are, the remains of those 24 hostages, and they just want to, I don't know, play some games for some reason, right? Now, there was also a drama right now at the peace summit here, the live feed that we have from Egypt. That was the attendance of Prime Minister Netanyahu. So he didn't want to go at first. Then President Trump asked him to go. Then Erdogan of Turkey had a meltdown, said, if Bibi is going, I'm not going. So Netanyahu is not going. It's not really that surprising. The Hamas officials and the delegation have now been located. They couldn't find them for a while, but they are now there. Some of them who will be, I would say, part of this the peace summit. So we have obviously our live feed also from Tel Aviv. There's a lot to give you guys as an update following the previous live coverage about President Trump's visit to Israel and Jerusalem. Obviously, he made a speech at the Knesset for the first time in history. And a couple of things. So, the senior Hamas official, this is Khalil Ismail Al-Haya. He has now announced that the countdown to renewed attacks has already begun, as in the end of ceasefire. He basically, his statement confirms what a lot of people were skeptical about this ceasefire, that Hamas are rearming faster than Gaza is healing. And on both sides are preparing just in case if something happens. Now, of course, there's a lot of people who want the ceasefire to end immediately from both sides. The fanatics on the Gaza side saying, yeah, we have to go and wipe out Israel, the usual nonsense that they give all the time. And there are some people in Israel saying that, well, we can't really trust this peace process while we still have Hamas next door in Gaza, right? Right now, the position is calm. Everybody stay calm. The announcement by the families of hostages is changing the mood. These are the people who are still waiting for the bodies of their loved ones, and they haven't obviously received them. And apparently they're not receiving them because only 4 out of 28 will be given by Gaza. They have said that the families of hostages received with shock and outrage the news of the intention of return of only 4 bodies of the fallen out of the 28 held by Hamas. This is a blatant violation of the agreement by Hamas. We expect the Israeli government and the mediators to act immediately to rectify this terrible injustice. The families of the fallen hostages are in particularly difficult days and deep mourning. We will not give up on any hostages, male or female, and we expect the mediators to enforce the terms of the agreement and hold Hamas accountable for the violation. Now, of course, every single country who signed this, including Egypt themselves, obviously the Americans led this, and the Qataris and everybody else, they have signed the deal, which is, if either side violate the obvious points, which in this case, Hamas's responsibility is to release all the bodies, and Hamas agreed. They could have said, days ago, weeks ago, they could have said, by the way, we might not know where some of the bodies are. They could have said that, but they didn't. They said, of course, yeah, we'll do it. Now, this is breaking the agreement. So there has to be some sort of consequence, some sort of punishment. Will we get that in the next few minutes as the peace summit begins in Sharm el-Sheikh? Now, over the last few hours in Gaza, we've had absolute mayhem because Hamas have retaken control of the streets. And their forces have already killed 32 members of the rival groups and tribes in Gaza City, and 24 others have been arrested. 30 have been critically wounded by Hamas. This is part of the internal conflict in Gaza, which again the mainstream media are not really interested in covering, but it's very important to show the absolute chaos that you're seeing in Gaza, not just Gaza City, but around Gaza Strip in general. Now, senior advisor to the anti-Hamas tribe, Yasser Abu Shabab, was reportedly eliminated as obviously as part of they were initially obviously given payment to some of the other tribes to find the others, to hunt them down. But then a lot of them have now been killed anyway. But there is a hunt. There's a manhunt by Hamas to find all the other anti-Hamas Gazans to ensure that there is no group that is a rival to Hamas remains. Essentially, I think the plan that they have is that they could say, of course, Hamas, we will no longer use the label Hamas to be in charge of Gaza. Yeah, we'll just allow anybody who wants to in Gaza to do it. But before that starts, I think they're just going around eliminating any sort of rivalry, any competitor, so that at the end of the day, when the committee begins with Tony Blair, President Trump and everybody else, then obviously they could say, well, we are the ones left. So we are the ones with experience. We're not going to use the name Hamas, but we could be part of the new governance of Gaza. So that's probably their plan right now anyway, to ensure that they have retaken control. Now we have the latest video from another hostage, Yusuf Jaime Ohana, who has been reunited with his father. Let's go to that video. We're still waiting for the investigation by the Egyptian authorities on the explosion that we showed you as well.
Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, imanu v'tianu l'zman hazeh. Yosef Chaim, חיים שלי, האור שלי, הלב שלי, הלב שלי, הלב שלי. די, זה מאחורינו כבר. נשמות שלי, שנתיים, יום.
Now, meanwhile, we have the latest images coming from Gaza that has been promised to become de-radicalized, but some of the images don't really show any sign of a hopeful future, as the children are now flying Hamas flag, and of course they're also being seen carrying guns. These are very, very young children who, again, as usual, the brainwashing. You see the mother carrying the child. They always start early with their own radicalization. So if the plan is to truly de-radicalize Gaza and demilitarize this, one thing you have to start doing immediately is the issues around education and parenthood, the kids in Gaza. If you stop the brainwashing immediately, then of course things change. But otherwise, there is absolutely no hope. You can take out Hamas, all of them, but then these kids are going to grow up and basically replace the former Hamas terrorists. Now, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer, who yesterday, his government took credit for the negotiations and the peace deal, and of course, the Israelis and the Americans said we don't know what they're talking about because the British government had no involvement. Keir Starmer has now made a new statement. He's just met with his friend Erdogan, the dictator of Turkey, saying that the United Kingdom is now ready to monitor the Gaza ceasefire and to help decommission Hamas's weapons. So basically, Keir Starmer is now saying Britain is now ready to help oversee what happens in Gaza, and also go and politely ask Hamas to give up their weapons. Good luck with that, Keir. You can't even run your own country, let alone what is actually happening in the Middle East. That's why the British government had no involvement, because nobody actually had any faith in them to do anything. So we still have the live feed. We're also going to be joined shortly by a special guest for the first time on Tousi TV. We are going to have, for those of you who are familiar with this channel, Sahar TV is going to be joining us live in the next few minutes to give us his perspective on this so-called peace summit and the whole ceasefire deal. While we do that, if you did miss the explosion itself in the east of Cairo, this is what happened. So as we said from the beginning, we still don't know exactly the reasoning behind this mysterious explosion, but the authorities in Egypt are now investigating this. They are saying that it's unlikely that it would be, for example, Muslim Brotherhood. It could be anything else. Or as they say in the Islamic Republic of Iran, it could just be a gas leak, because there's gas leak everywhere all the time. So we're now waiting for the world leaders to come into that room, in the main hall in the conference venue in Sharm el-Sheikh, to begin the process, the so-called peace process. And of course, LCC of Egypt and President Trump will be leading this. I expect President Trump to just basically steal the whole show and just run the whole thing himself. Obviously, LCC is hosting this, but doesn't necessarily mean that we have to listen to that idiot the whole time. Now, let me just see what's going on with some of the reaction in the live chats while we wait for them. We have a super chat from Kamal saying, are we going to ignore the cowardly conservatives? Which ones? Meloni joined the European Commission in approving sanctions on arms embargo. The Danish government approved sanctions. Only Geert Wilders and Orban stood up for Israel in the Netherlands. Yes, basically, that's all going to be ignored. The message from Jerusalem is that as long as you've still stayed an ally, and there's only a few countries that remained an ally in the West, so that includes the United States, mostly, Germany and Italy. Obviously, then you can include countries like Poland into that. But the reality is that things got a little bit complicated with the globalists trying to bring down Netanyahu. So when the arrest warrant was issued, there were people like Meloni, people like Friedrich Merz in Europe. Both of them said, we don't care. We're not going to arrest our friend, the Israeli Prime Minister. And of course, President Trump said the same thing, saying, well, you could come to the US whenever you want, and we will have to wait for... I think they're now going to start getting ready to sit down. Why is everybody late? I mean, by the way, the reason for the delay is actually because President Trump was late, and it wasn't his fault. It was because in the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, the speeches went so long that I think during that session we had 5 wars that started, and 5 wars also ended eventually. 5 generations, 6 million people grew up, grew old, and eventually the speeches ended. President Trump was like, can we end this? I'm late to Egypt. He actually even made a joke at the end saying, great speeches, guys, but you all spoke for ages. I had an appointment in Sharm el-Sheikh, but that was a once in a lifetime sort of situation where the President of the United States spoke in the Knesset. And that's why he was late, and that's why everyone else is late. And there was also the drama around, as I said, the Hamas delegation, because they couldn't find them for about a couple of hours. This was at the same time as Hamas having a bit of a problem with allegedly locating the dead bodies. 24 bodies of hostages that are still missing. Keir Starmer, last few minutes, was spotted hanging out with his boyfriend, Emmanuel Macron. They were just going to a room to do whatever they do, have a chat, have a cup of tea, powder their nose. Now, Michael in the live chat, thank you so much for the support. Where is, trying to get some reaction on the start time. And I'm still trying to get from our sources in Cairo about the investigation. So LCC is claiming that Cairo is a city of peace. This is symbolically their message coming from the Egyptian government, which is basically controlled by a military. So peaceful. And but they can't control the gas leaks with the explosions. We have the latest pictures coming from the Palestinian terrorists and the criminals who have now been released by Israel. They have now been returned, most of them, to Gaza in Khan Yunis. And of course, there were massive celebrations in Gaza as that was happening, including people just shooting and wasting their bullets and their rifles. Weird culture, absolutely weird culture. Now, let's double check. President Trump just, by the way, finished his sit-down session with LCC. That's why we are now waiting for these guys to return. I'm going to get some more reaction. I think we have the footage. Yes. All right. We have the convoy of the dead bodies who are now being returned. Okay, let's quickly go and see what's going on here in Israel. So this is the live footage that we are now getting from the IDF. And this is going towards Tel Aviv. So this is just basically outside Tel Aviv. Trying to see, the footage is falling apart. Why is it frozen? Yeah, I'm guessing the internet connection is not great there. So this is the convoy. Obviously, they are carrying the 4 bodies of the hostages the dead hostages, but 24 still missing, mysteriously, and Hamas have no idea where they are. It's not really a good look. It's not a good start to the peace summit, and President Trump, LCC, and all these guys, they don't want to be humiliated either. They're going to have to say something about this, or they could just essentially just pretend nothing is happening. That's the other strategy. They could just ignore this update, even though the Israeli government have already shown outrage, even though the hostages' families have shown outrage, saying that we can't continue like this. You can't go ahead with the peace deal when we don't have our loved ones' bodies back, so remains back. So the 24 hostages' bodies still missing. These are the ones that are going back now towards Tel Aviv. It's weird. The whole thing has been completely shambolic from the beginning. There is a... Yeah, this live feed doesn't have sound. We have some of the Palestinian terrorists who have been released, and the criminals. Obviously, some of them were mostly terrorists, the others were just other criminals. One of them is Shadi Abu Sido, who self-identifies as a journalist, who has been released as well. I think he should be a little bit happy. Let's go and see what it looks like.
اقسم بالله انه ما بناكل ولا بنشرب ونشبح عريانين، واحنا بيشبحونا عريانين، بيشبحونا ليل ونهار لحتى اليوم. هيو لحتى اليوم مش غزة ولا الناس ولا العالم.
Yeah, he seems calm. So he's happy. His family, I don't know if they're alive, probably happy, and he's probably going to go and continue his propaganda as usual and help his other friends rearm in Gaza. I think Noah's boyfriend, is that Noah's boyfriend, has been also released. Hang on. Yeah. So Noah Argamani, some of you obviously are familiar, remember her from October the 7th. She was obviously rescued about a year ago. She has finally been reunited with Avinatan, who is her boyfriend. Obviously, he was still stuck in Gaza and held by the terrorists, and now he is out. So there's some good news today and some slightly concerning updates about what on earth is going on with the peace deal. So we still have the live camera for the remains of the dead hostages, but we will also go back to Egypt, and we're going to get some more reaction in the live chats in the meantime. Let's go back to Egypt quickly. There we go. Sharm el-Sheikh. Oh, there we go. Okay. I'm now waiting for our good friend Sahar TV to join us in the next few minutes. Hello. We're going to send a link to Sahar TV to join us as well. Okay, we're waiting for him. In the meantime, let's double check the updates and then get some of your reaction as well. We're waiting for President Trump and President El-Sisi to begin this session. By the way, big news, Indonesia, there was a report that they said that the Indonesian president and the foreign minister will be visiting Israel imminently. The Indonesian government have now denied those reports, saying that we are not going to Israel imminently. So I'm not really sure how that started, that rumor. So that's not happening. Also, there was a bit of a banter situation a few minutes ago between Erdogan and Giorgia Meloni of Italy. Erdogan, who used to smoke like a chimney, is advising Meloni to cut down on smoking cigarettes. Let's go to this moment.
I saw you coming down from the plane.
Uçakta inerken görmüştüm
We arrived
sizi.
together.
Beraber geldik, intikal ettik havalimanına.
Is everything okay?
Her şey yolunda.
İyi gördüm.
Oh, you look great.
Oh, thank you.
Ama
Very kind.
sigarayı bıraktırmam lazım.
But I have to make you stop smoking somehow.
I know, I know.
Brilliant.
I don't want
This
to kill
is
somebody.
impossible.
Yeah, I think Erdogan was trying to flirt with Meloni. Didn't go well. Okay. Yeah, obviously. So we just got the confirmation, obviously, in terms of Benjamin Netanyahu's decision not to go to Egypt. I didn't know if people were actually thinking this was going to be true. So they said, obviously, he's cancelled his trip from Israel to Sharm el-Sheikh, not because of the holidays, but actually because of President Erdogan's objection. Well, we kind of knew that. I love how they had to clarify this publicly. That the Turkish officials basically went to President Trump and begged him that you were not coordinating with us, that the Israelis were going to come. And if Netanyahu gets to Egypt, then Erdogan is going to cry like a baby and is going to sulk. He's not going to come. And obviously Erdogan is a NATO member, so so basically President Trump had to tell Netanyahu, oh, maybe it's not a good idea for you to come. And so that's why the Prime Minister is not going to Sharm el-Sheikh. Now, it's also probably not safe for Bibi to be there, so it's not really missing much. Going back to some of you guys in the live chat, we got Marina saying Mossad loves you to see Am Israel Chai. Brilliant. See, the allegations that we get funded by Mossad is now true because Marina from Israel just gave us some money. Kamal says Israel just released more Sinwars. Yeah, just about, was it 2,000 of them? Hamas, oh, hello. What's going on? Okay. Hamas says they won't disarm. What security guarantees are there? In America, Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson are dividing opinion by spreading Islamic propaganda. Not good. Yeah, there's a lot happening in that comment. So it's the job of the new committee and basically the US, Egypt, Saudi and all these guys, Qatar, to go in and stop Hamas from rearming itself. It's their job. It's not the job of Gazans and it's not the job of Israel to do that. So if it goes wrong, you can blame the committee. Congrats on your wedding, on your marriage. Marriage, love your show. Thank you so much, Mortgage Mike. Patricia says, do we know the missing hostages not alive somewhere? It's highly unlikely that they are alive. That's also according to the Israeli intelligence. But that will backfire even bigger than what they are doing on Hamas. Massively. If they are somehow holding them alive. That would be a terrible idea. I mean, hopefully it's true. That means they're alive, but it will be a terrible strategy. This peace will not last long as it is not possible to trust Hamas. They will strike back. There we go. We got the president now. It's going to be loud.
Monica.
It's like the Oscars. What is Wow. We got Jordan and the United States. They are good friends. Where is Al-Sisi? Unless they're going to do one-on-one photos. like President Trump is basically a rock star celebrity and they have to take photos with him. Who's next? Yeah, I think they're literally gonna be taking photos one by one with the rock star of the moment, President Trump. It's crazy. Yeah. Just standing there. There's going to be 20 photos because there are 20 leaders there. My God. Right, let me check the. Where is Sahar? We're gonna have Sahar TV joining us shortly. You don't want him as an enemy? Amazing. Sahar TV will be joining us in 5 minutes. Macron is very touchy-feely, isn't it? He's always trying to hug the president. Never seen the Indonesian delegation being so happy to be with the president. It's gonna backfire badly. I can't wait to see Starmer. That's going to be great, isn't it? Unless we missed him. Have we missed him? We haven't missed him. Right? No. I assumed they started with Jordan. Okay, he's coming on.
You know how tough this man is, but I like him. I like him.
He's actually taller than the Donald. Erdogan is slightly taller than he's huge. Alright, can't wait to see Starmer. Why are you bringing her on? Oh my God, it's the only leader. Macron didn't bring his boyfriend. So was the Erdogan show at the end of the day. Yep, Team NATO leaves. Who's next? Yeah. Alright, where's Sahar? love how this is part of the whole session. It's so funny. Why can't they just do one big group photo with President Trump standing in the middle? Alright, Sahar is coming in. Alright, so we are going to be adding Sahar TV. Hang on, I need to fix this camera first. What is going on with this? Okay, so 1 second. Alright, now we can go to Sahar, who somehow right now has both his name and the Tousi TV logo on top of him. Hang on, let me bring down the volume. So you're representing both channels. Hello, how are you? Welcome to the channel.
Thank you. My debut. Thank you so much for having me.
I know it's been yeah, we've been trying to get this sorted for a while. For those of you who are not familiar, we've got Sahar TV. Check out his channel. I'm sure a lot of you are already following him, but if you're not, then how dare you? So also, guys, if you thought that I've been pessimistic about this thing, go on, give us your thoughts, Sahar.
Oh my God, I'm incredibly pessimistic about this. If we haven't learned from history, this is going to be a big mess up. Of course, now everything seems promising. Trump signed a peace deal between Israel and Hamas. But if you actually look at the interviews between Hamas spokespeople, you can actually see that they say, we will not disarm. It's our right to have our weapons. So what do we expect? They also say openly that, and that's the funniest thing, they say, we can give them a ceasefire for 5 to 10 years, but then after 5 to 10 years, we will attack again. Sounds very familiar to what you're asking? The Treaty of Hudaybiyah of Muhammad. When Muhammad tried to impose a war on the Quraysh tribe, he said exactly the same thing. He wanted to give them peace for 9 years, 9 months, and 9 days. After 2 years, broke the ceasefire. Why? Because they were weak. The same thing is going to happen here. We are going to have another October 7th and another October 7th. And that's the problem I have with my government. We never learn from our mistakes.
But that's the thing. So a lot of the liberal left-wingers in the West always say Israel, the Israeli governments are always very ruthless, genocidal. But actually, you would say, and a lot of other people would say, we've been critical of a lot of Israeli prime ministers or Israeli governments for being weak and for conceding too much and making concessions. You've seen in the 2000s, in the 90s, basically every few years, right? So yeah, what would you say about that?
So listen, I mean, the only way to, and I really hope that this would happen, and that's my criticism, my biggest criticism of Benjamin Netanyahu, and I know that there was a lot of international pressure. We had 30% left to finish. We had the last stronghold of Hamas, and we should have kicked, I don't know if I can curse, I'm not going to curse. We should have done exactly we should have eradicated that terrorist organization. They did not surrender. Just pay attention. They did not surrender. As soon as it ended, what did they chant down the streets? Khaybar, Khaybar, ya Yahud, to the Jews. Remember what the army of Muhammad did to you in Khaybar. We will do the same to you. If you don't know, they beheaded the men, they raped the women, and did horrific things to the children as well. So I think that is my biggest pet peeve with the Israeli government. And I love the Israeli government. Yeah, I have some criticism against it, but we have to remember that if Israel would have ended this, it wouldn't have been a band-aid. We would have finally finished the war despite international criticism.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. At the same time, you've had this situation with the last few hours, well, the last couple of days, we've had so many ups and downs. Hamas saying, we'll disarm, and then, no, we didn't say we're going to disarm. Over the last couple of hours, we got confirmation that Hamas are only releasing 4 dead bodies out of 28. Apparently, they've lost them. Now, this could be, what do you think? This could either be mind games, or it could genuinely be the fact that the Hamas members who were looking after the dead bodies, they're dead now. They got killed by the IDF. What is your instinct saying? Do they have the dead bodies?
Wow. You know, coming from Hamas, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, knowing this organization, how can you trust them? I think they do have most of the bodies. It does make sense that they lost most of them because remember, they've been holding dead bodies since October 7th. That's 2 years. Just imagine, try to think where you put this body and probably the smell. They probably buried some of it and then they had to dig. I don't actually know. I just know that this is a ruthless terrorist organization that cannot be trusted. And of course, they're playing mind games, and they've been playing mind games since the beginning of this negotiations. They said that they will not surrender, and they said that they will surrender, and that's a matter of stage 2 or then stage 3. So come on, guys. Don't be ignorant. Don't be blind to the reality. Hamas is coming back and is coming back strong.
But that's the thing. So my instinct was the last couple of days, even today, Hamas have been going around hunting down the other rivals and tribes in Gaza. And my instinct says what they want to do is basically wipe out any other competitor so that when the new committee says, oh, so we're going to have a Palestinian body in Gaza, they could say, oh, we don't really have Hamas anymore as a flag, but we can do the job if you want, because there's nobody else left, right?
That is exactly what I thought. And that's a great point that you just brought. If they're truly planning to disarm, then why try to eradicate the other groups, the other gangs that are there? You're showing no intention in leaving the Gaza Strip or leaving politics. So why are you killing your competitors? Great point. Great point.
Yeah.
That proves exactly that Hamas's intentions are to stay.
Also, we have Keir Starmer now on the screen with President Trump. I don't think he wasn't even invited; he just turned up. But the British government yesterday took credit for this peace deal. What is your opinion? Because the Australians and the Americans laughed the whole time.
I mean, listen. The moment Keir Starmer recognized Palestine as a state after the biggest massacre against the Jews since the Holocaust, I mean, there's other reasons why he's not credible to me, but according to my instincts, it feels like there's a lot of incentives coming from Qatar, a lot of incentives. So Keir Starmer can say whatever he wants. We all know who's actually in charge of this, which is President Donald J. Trump. Of course, the pressure of Benjamin Netanyahu with the IDF in the Gaza Strip. If you would not, and by the way, I don't think it's a good deal. I do think that it's amazing that the hostages are back. It is not a good deal because those 250 terrorists that are serving life are going to be committing terror attacks again and again and again. And my family could be next. My family could be next. So no, Keir Starmer, get the hell out. Nobody needs you.
Now, speaking of Keir Starmer and talented people, tell us about, for those who are not familiar, how did you start your channel? What made you start that channel? And the format of the channel that you have is absolutely insane. The idea that you had, obviously, tell people, in case they don't know you, what you do on the channel.
Are you talking specifically about the reaction videos, or are you talking about the debates?
Actually, we prefer both. But the funny bit is the reaction stuff. Obviously, it's quite funny. But the debates are also actually, to be fair, the debates made you who you are. I think the branding is you just basically. It's not really just being defensive and defending the position, but you actually expose the other side, but not saying much. You just nod, and then they just dig their own hole. So tell people how you do your channel, what made you start it, and what you do.
So I started this on October 7th. I got a phone call from my sister, and she told me about everything that happened. I really couldn't believe it. But the first place I went to was social media. I went to TikTok. And then I started joining TikTok lives, and I realized that people were talking absolute BS about the situation. They said that the concert never happened, that the Nova Festival is a made-up thing. And then I was like, okay, well, I need to give them some rebuttal. So I joined, and I started going on TikTok lives, and very quickly, I started realizing that this was an echo chamber. I kept getting muted, kept getting banned, kept getting doxxed. And I realized what would be the best way for me to contribute to the Jewish people around the world, to the Western world, because this is not about Hamas and Israel. It's about Islam versus the West. I realized this very, very quickly. So I started having one-on-one conversations. I started posting those conversations. And very slowly, I started getting messages from people in the UK, people in Germany, people in France telling me, listen, I used to go to Hamas, to pro-Hamas protests in the United Kingdom. The only reason why I changed my mind is because you were very respectful to the other side, despite the fact that they cursed your mother, despite the fact that they cursed your wife. You were very respectful. You were giving them an opportunity to engage in a peaceful conversation. But we realized that the other side is not willing to talk. They don't care about the well-being of the West. They don't care about the well-being of the Jews. Many messages just like this started pouring in, and I was like, wow, I'm actually making a difference. So I kept expanding and expanding and expanding, and almost 2 years after, I think we have passed more than 300 million views on all social media platforms. It's actually exploding. People love hearing those conversations, and more opportunities are coming in. And then the commentary just came along, I think, inspired based on people like you who are doing commentary exactly the same way that I was inspired to do. And I think that this is the best way to transfer this information. Watching an engaging video with an engaging person is the best way to change people's mind. So I thank you for that, because you're an inspiration, brother.
I appreciate it, thank you, and you've done really well. 300 million views. That's almost as many of the humanitarian aid that was stolen by Hamas in a week. So that's good, impressive work. So I love how President Trump right now this whole peace summit is basically just his show. He's just standing there like a celebrity, and they're just taking pictures with him. I think this is just a Trump show. He doesn't really care about what happened after.
Can I ask you why you're optimistic about this as well?
Oh, I'm not optimistic. No, I'm actually pessimistic. But yeah. So, well, the reality is, my fear is not some sort of imminent threats, fallout. It will be that a more medium, long term, as you said, that we're just going to go back to square one. My problem with this is that it doesn't solve the main issue. And there are two main issues. One is, you might say, well, it's the threat of Islamism. It's still there. Radicalization is still there. No, but that's not my main issue. There's a complicated situation, because the aim of the international community is to eventually create some sort of Palestinian entity, right? Some sort of Palestinian state. They keep pushing it. You just made it more complicated. You have Gaza now. Then you got Judea and Samaria, or the West Bank. Are you going to keep them together? You just made everything more complicated by giving Gaza its autonomy. If Gaza was what President Trump proposed initially, months ago, which was basically the US will take over and they will have a fully demilitarized non-entity. Hypothetically, I hate the United Nations, but something like the United Nations will run it. That would have been okay. But it's still going to be Palestinian. That makes it complicated for the future so-called Palestinian state. You haven't solved the two-state solution nonsense that you guys are all obsessed with in the international community. That's my biggest problem. Not just the Hamas terrorists, and actually the kids in Gaza who today are walking around with guns, celebrating. That's a whole different problem, as you said. But there's a geopolitical problem that is not going to be resolved when it comes to Palestinian state, as they call it. What do you think?
So for the people who don't know, a peace deal, a two-state solution, has been offered in numerous cases. It was offered in 1937, which they rejected. It was offered in 1947, which was rejected. It was offered in 1967, which was rejected. It was offered in the Oslo Accords in 1993 and 1995, and in the year 2000, in the year 2005 when we pulled out of Gaza, and in the year 2008. Every single time it was rejected. Why? Because the leaders know that it's going to be a suicide mission to admit that Israel is a Jewish state. So they don't care about Gaza. They don't care about Judea and Samaria. They care min maye el maye, from water to water. Palestine Arabiye. Jews are not Arab. What will happen to us? That chant on its own is genocidal. It calls for the ethnic cleansing of Jews. So you need to understand, I get you. It doesn't make sense. Is Gaza Palestine? Is Judea and Samaria Palestine? Are they going to be connected somehow, dividing the Jewish state? It's not very clear. Again, it seems like a very joyful time, but just remember, right? Just remember, at the end of this, we will see the dust settles, and we will see that this whole thing was a shtick. That is my opinion.
Well, a couple of things. You mentioned, rightly so, that the two-state solution was offered many times and it was rejected because that means they have to accept Israel is real. But I could also make an argument that we actually did, for a short period of time, have a two-state solution between 2005 and 2023, because Gaza was given to the Palestinians. Israel pulled out. You had your own autonomy. You had your own government. So we did experiment with the two-state solution. What did they do? Start building tunnels and doing schools with the United Nations to brainwash kids, and eventually Yahya Sinwar could throw a stick at the drone. That's basically what they did, right? That's the ending of the story. How did that go?
In 2005, Israel completely withdrew from Gaza, digging out the graves of Israeli casualties that were buried inside Gaza, because they knew exactly what the Gazans were going to do. In the year 2007, Hamas was elected by force. They threw out Fatah members from the roofs, dragged them down the streets. And in the year 2008, right? 1 year after Israel started the blockade, and Egypt started as well, the blockade, they started firing rockets. If this was about an occupation that's been going on for 20 years, then why did they fire rockets in 2008 and in 2009 and pretty much every single year until the end? Because they don't care. It's about the eradication of Jews. And then if you're making the argument, yes, it is about the occupation, why wasn't a single rocket being fired into Egypt? Is it because they're Muslim? Do you have something against Jews only? Probably.
By the way, speaking of the Palestinian leadership, we got Mr. Potato Head, Mahmoud Abbas, over there. Do you think he's the future? Do you there is hope. There is hope. We got Mahmoud Abbas. Come on.
Every person that advocates for the pay-for-slay policy, which, if you don't know what it is, you pay Palestinians to go and commit terror attacks in Israel, and then you reward them by naming streets after them and rewarding the family and commemorating them. These types of people do not deserve to run this. By the way, there's a really good proposal by Dr. Mordechai Kedar. I don't know if you want to hear, but it's a great one. He believes that the only way for Palestinians to have self-governing is based on ancient times. He believes that the reason why Saudi Arabia and why the UAE are successful is because of their tribal structure. The reason why Iraq is not successful, and by the way, they have just as much oil as the UAE, is because they don't have any homogeny between the groups. If you actually divide the Palestinian cities, such as Ramallah and Jenin and Hebron, according to their tribal families, and they're going to run Palestinian city-states, that's going to promise peace, because now there's not that religious aspect. There's that family aspect. And if one family messes up, the entire emirate gets compromised. That is the best solution that I've heard so far.
It is. By the way, I just noticed, why on earth is the president of FIFA in the middle of this peace summit? Trump is just inviting anyone he knows now, because obviously the FIFA World Cup is going to be in the US. So it's like, well, we're going to have peace. We got the world. Let's bring on FIFA, one of the second most corrupt organization after the United Nations. So we now have a family photo. But the payments and the naming streets, that was also a long strategy that was also created and helped by Khomeini, the first supreme leader, before he became supreme leader, because obviously all his life he was the one. After the muftis and those guys in the 30s and 20s in Palestine, that it was people like Khomeini that basically created the modern ideology of how Shia Islam could help the Islamic Caliphate that they want. Obviously, Hezbollah was created, and even Hamas was helped. This tactic of naming streets and all this nonsense is a big thing in Iran. Every street is after some sort of martyr. So many streets. Yeah, it's insane.
What would you say to people who claim that the IRGC or the government of Iran does not represent Islam because they're Shia? What would you say to people like that?
Well, obviously, Islam is not real, but if we say from a perspective of Islam, it's something, right? As an ideology, technically speaking, yes. I mean, the Shias would be considered as the Green Party. Nobody cares. Or in the UK, the Liberal Democrats. It's the wing of Islam that there's a reason they're the minority, but because they love victimhood. And but they think they're superior. Technically speaking, you can make an argument that they are the closest to Muhammad's line, because it was supposed to be based on bloodline. But actually, the Sunnis are correct, because even Muhammad never said, after my death, he has to be my nephew or my cousin. So technically, the Shias are fake, but both sides still carry the fundamental values anyway, and the ideology. Even closer than Catholics versus Protestants. So the Shia and the Sunnis, they have some differences in terms of how they stand to pray, or where do they put their arm. They got technical differences, but actually they both still believe in the same level of jihad, same level of marrying 6-year-olds and all that stuff. So. Equality. Anyway, so, okay, these guys are now going to go into the room to start the session. Thank you so much, Sahar, for joining. We will have you more on the channel. I will still give you a shout out more as well. There's going to be a lot coming from Sahar. I have a plan. I'm going to basically try and kidnap him for our future project. I can't say kidnap to a Jew. Gonna kidnap him. We're gonna kidnap him. Yeah, we have big projects coming up on Tousi TV and obviously with the new media world, and we're gonna have Sarah's help as well. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming on the channel. Cheers, mate. Bye bye. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're still waiting to get the confirmation about the investigation with the explosion in Egypt, as I have no idea what's going on here, but we'll figure it out. But for now, the most important thing that you can do to help yourself as well is to join Tousi TV Plus. You can scan the QR code to get full access to the channel, or you can just go on Tousi.tv or find the link in the description to get access to all our podcasts, the documentaries, original series, chat forum, everything that we have. We're going to take a break and come back with more coverage of the so-called Peace Summit, and we have an update about my good friend Tommy Robinson, who had his trial in Westminster, London. I'm Maya Tousi, and we are the media.